Hi, grade 9s, and in this video we'll be looking at cells. This is integrated science, and cells is a topic that you'll be examined on. It's a topic that you have to understand for you to ace your grade 9 and also your grade 12, and this is more of a basis, or rather a foundation, for a lot of science that you have to meet in your academic life. You have cells in grade 12, you have cells even as you go to university, you have cells for those of you who want to do medicine. This is a very important foundation that we're laying here. So let's get into it. So when we talk of cells, we need to understand, say, all living organisms, whether plants, whether animals, whether human beings, are made up of cells, and cells are more of small structures, rather small building blocks that make up a living organism. So each and every living organism that you can think of is made up of cells. So now, there are organisms that have one cell, there are organisms that have more than one cell. So we've got what are known as unicellular organisms. Unicellular. When we talk of unicellular organisms, we are talking of organisms that have only one cell. So it is an organism that is made up of only one cell. And when we talk of organisms that are made up of more than one cell, these are known as multicellular organisms. Alright, great, nice. Multicellular organisms. Many cells. Okay, so unicellular organisms are made up of one cell, and multicellular organisms are made up of one or more, or rather two or more cells. So when we talk of cells as well, cells are not visible to us just by our eyes. Cells are not visible to us just by looking, and so we employ the use of what are known as microscopes. So a microscope is simply a magnifying device that is used to study small bodies such as cells. So microscopes are used to magnify bodies, organisms, and whatever we might think of, just so that we can investigate, we can find out, we can view the different cells that make up organisms. Okay, so you can't see cells just by looking with your naked eyes. So as I said, there are what are known as multicellular organisms and unicellular organisms. So here's a question to you, grade 9s. Do you think humans are unicellular or multicellular organisms? Well, humans are multicellular organisms, plants are multicellular organisms. Humans are said to have said to be built up by or with over 300 trillion cells. So you as a human being, you have over 300 trillion cells. Plants have a lot of cells as well. Whales have a lot of cells. Dogs have a lot of cells. All these organisms that I've mentioned fall under the multicellular organisms. So in this, in our syllabus as grade 9s, the most important things that we look at are only two types of cells, and these are the plant cell. We look at the plant cell, and we look at the animal cell. So animals and plants have different types of cells, and these cells are different because of the functions that they play. They are adapted to the roles that they have to play in either the animals or in the plant. Okay, and these cells vary in shape, they vary in size, and they vary in a lot of ways, just so as to adapt to the type of role that they play. Okay, so the shape varies, the size varies, and the organelles, the things that are found in the cells also vary, just so as to adapt to the type of work that they do. Okay, so even in as much as these two cells might be different, they have things in common, or they have structures in common. So let's first start with looking at these common structures in both the plant cell and the animal cell. Okay, so let's look at the building blocks of cells. What makes up cells? Let's look at the common things in cells in both the animal and the plant cell. So when you talk of a common thing in both the animal and the plant cell, the first thing that we can look at is what is known as the cell membrane. Cell membrane. Have you ever heard of the term cell membrane before? When we talk of the cell membrane, it is the outermost covering of the cell. It is like the boundary of the cell. It is what demarcates a cell, or distinguishes a cell from the outside world, the outside environment. And this is made up of fats. It is made up of fats and as well as proteins. So this is like boundary. You can think of it as a boundary. We can think of it as we can think of it as a boundary. So this cell membrane has has a role that it plays, and it is made in such a way that it is adapted to that role that it plays in a cell, or rather in cells. So the function of the cell membrane can be thought of as similar to the immigration. You know immigration, eh? You know, if let's think of cell membrane as Zambia's boundary. You've seen the map of Zambia. The boundaries there may be thought of as the cell membrane. Now, not any person, not anyone is allowed to come into Zambia. As you come into Zambia, you'll be met by the immigration officers, and they'll ask you for your passport. They'll ask you for a lot of other documents to make sure that you're a clean person. You are free to enter into Zambia. So the cell membrane works in the same way. The cell membrane is what regulates what goes in and what goes out of the cell wall. It's like the immigration. It's like the traffic, and so it regulates what goes in and what goes out. The term regulates. Let's go with regulates. What goes in and what goes out of the cell. In and or out of the cell. So not everything that it's not everything that goes into the cell. It's not everything that can leave the cell. So this is the first function that this cell membrane has. It regulates what goes in and what goes out of the cell. So for it to do that, it means that it should be able to allow certain substances to go in, and should be able to allow certain substances not to go in. Yeah. So when we think of it in that way, we say the cell membrane is a semi-permeable. Here's a term that you have to know. is said to be semi-permeable. So in talk of permeable, simply talking of we're simply talking of allowing to go in. So it does not allow everything to go in, but it allows some things, so only some substances to go in. Okay, so only a few molecules, only a few substances go in to the cell through the cell membrane. It is said to be semi-permeable. Okay, this is the first function of the cell membrane. Another function of the cell membrane is that it gives shape to the cell. Gives shape to the cell. The cell membrane gives shape to the cell, and it is like a boundary, so it protects what is inside the cell. So it gives shape to the cell, and it also protects what is inside the cell. Protects cell. So it is the outermost covering, it is the outermost layer that we have in a cell. So let's say we've got this cell. Let's assume this is a cell. This covering that we have, this boundary that we have, is what is known as the cell membrane. I hope we are together, grade 9s. I hope you understand what we're talking about. So the cell membrane is simply this covering that we have, this boundary that we have. And the cell membrane is a common part of a cell. Both animal cells and plant cells have the cell membrane. I hope we are clear on that. Both animal cells and plant cells have cell membrane. So we move on to the next part of the cell that is common to both animal and plant cells. The second part, or the second structure that is common in both animal and plant cells is what is known as the nucleus. So what is the nucleus? This part is usually found in the center of the cell. It is usually in the center of the cell. It is usually spherical or oval in shape, and yeah, so it's found in the center usually, not always. So let's go with center, and it is spherical or oval. And what else do we need to know about the nucleus? Yeah, so that's that about the nucleus. But what is the function of the nucleus? Or rather, what are the functions of the nucleus? You see, humans have brains. Yeah, humans have brains. Well, yeah, a brain. And so the nucleus can be thought of as similar to the brain or the heart. I don't know which one you feel is better, but it is what controls and it is what regulates the functions of the cell. So it is simply what tells the cell what to do. So we can think of it as the brain, as the mind. It is what controls the cell. So it controls the cell, rather it regulates or controls, or let's say and controls controls the cell. So it is the controlling factor of the cell. It is what tells the cell what to do and when to do what. You understand that? And what else is it used for? Is it useful for? The nucleus is what contains genetic material. I don't know if we understand the term genetic, but this is material that defines a cell. Not all cells are the same. Not all cells have the same functions, and the identification of a cell, the adaptation of a cell to its function is contained in its genes, in its DNA, and this important information is stored in the nucleus. So the nucleus stores really important information in the form of genetic information, or DNA or RNA. So it stores genetic information. This is the second use of the nucleus. Stores genetic information. And it also facilitates for what is known as cell division. So now these are big terms, and I'm just going to give you a brief understanding of what we're talking about. So when we talk of cell division, as I said, living organisms are made up of a lot of cells. Now these cells die and they have to be replaced. Not only that, but even as you grow, there's need for these cells to increase. So for cells to increase is what is known as cell division that takes place. So the cells divide and more cells come about. So if cells die, the living cells, the cells that are present there, will divide and will multiply. And when you have to grow, when you're growing taller, you're growing fatter, you're growing in whatever way, there's cell division as more cells are being produced. So the nucleus is what facilitates for that cell division, and that is one of the most important uses of, or the functions of, the cell of the nucleus. So this is it about the nucleus. It regulates, controls the cell, it stores genetic information, it is important for cell division. So the nucleus is like the brain of the cell, and it is very important and is found in both animal and plant cells. Okay, what other structure is common in both plants and animals? What other structure is common in both plants and animals? The next structure that is common in both plants and animals is what is known as the cytoplasm. Ever heard of cytoplasm, grade 9s? Cytoplasm. So when we talk of cytoplasm, we're simply talking of trying to think of the most illustrative example that can make us understand the cytoplasm. So when you talk of Earth has a ground, has a ground. But when you talk of your house has a floor, and your TV is seated on the floor. Your sofas are seated on the floor. Your tables are seated on the floor. So the cytoplasm can be thought of as the ground of the cell, the floor of the cell. So it is a semi-fluid. It simply is a semi-fluid substance, and this is where tiny bodies of the cell, known as organelles, are suspended and are allowed to float and are allowed to sit there. So the cytoplasm is simply the floor floor of a cell. Now this floor is not hard, it is a semi-fluid. It is a fluid, it is liquidish. You can think of it as a liquid, but it's not really a liquid, it's liquidish, and it is a semi-fluid in which organelles, or rather components of the cell, are allowed to suspend, to stay, and are given a place to stay in there. Okay. Now this cytoplasm has different functions. The first one is that it is a place where these organelles stay. So it's like a flow of the cell. So that's a function of the cytoplasm, and it is in the cytoplasm that chemical reactions actually do take place. Okay, chemical reactions do take place in the cytoplasm. So let me just write that. Chemical reactions take place. These chemical reactions take place. It's like a venue. I think of it as a venue of the cell. Yeah, I think that's it about the cytoplasm. And these three, let me just get rid of this. Okay. So these three, and by three, I mean the cytoplasm, I mean the nucleus, I mean the have I left cell membrane. These three are what are known as the living part of the cell. So these three are what are really important in all types of cells. So we've got the cytoplasm, we've got the nucleus, and then cell membrane. These are found in both animal and plant. Okay, so these are found in both animal and plant cells. So this is really important. You need to know what structures are found in both the animal and the plant cell. Now let's look at what is different in these two types of cells, the animal and the plant cell. What is different? So firstly, when we talk of the differences between the animal and the plant cells, the differences do not only come in what constitutes the animal cell and the plant cell, but also just from the outlook, the look of these two cells. They are totally different. Animal cells, very important point, animal cells have an irregular shape. In most cases, animal cells have an irregular shape, whereas plant cells have regular shape in most cases. So if I was to say, what is a regular shape? What is an irregular shape? A regular shape is any shape that we can think of, any normal shape that you know grade 9s. I'm talking about square, I'm talking about rectangle, I'm talking about triangle, and so on. A irregular shape is an undefined shape. So for example, if I was to ask you to say which of these two is a plant cell and which of these two is an animal cell. Firstly, let's identify which of these two, this is A and this is B. Which of these two is a regular? So A is regular shape, while B is irregular. And therefore we can conclude, even without knowing, even without further investigation, to say this definitely has to be a plant cell, and this one definitely has to be an animal cell. Are we together, very nice? So animals tend to have irregular shapes, while plant cells tends to have regular shape. Okay, I hope we are together on that one. So you will be asked, just by looking, without giving much more detail, you'd have two cells, one with a regular shape, the other with an irregular shape, and you'll be asked to identify which is which. So if you can remember this point, then this won't be a problem to you, grade 9s. Okay, now let's look at a plant cell in detail. What are the structures present in a plant cell? So let's look at a plant cell. Okay, let's change that to black, rather white. So let's look at plant cell. Plant cells. What structures are common in a plant cell? So apart from the nucleus, apart from the cytoplasm, and apart from the cell membrane, plant cells have other structures present. Okay, plant cells have other structures present. What other structures are present in the plant cell? Firstly, there is what is known as the cell wall. So cell walls are only present in plant cells, only in plant cells, only in plants. So remember how I told you to say the cell membrane is the outer cover of a cell. So let's assume this is a cell, an animal cell, or rather a plant cell. As you can see, it's got a regular shape. With plant cells, they have two outer coverings. So the outermost one is the cell wall. Then they have the cell membrane just right inside the cell wall. They have the cell membrane. So only plant cells have cell wall. This is very, very important to note. Only in plants. This is very, very, very important, grade 9s. This is found only in plants. Cell wall is found only in plants. So now what is the function of a cell wall? So it surrounds the plant cell. Its main support, its main function is that it creates it is used for support of the cell, support cell, and also gives shape gives that regular shape that we have, gives shape to the cell. So cell wall is only found in plants. I cannot stress this point enough. Cell wall is only found in plants. Okay? It is outside the same cell membrane, and it is used to support the cell, to give it a more rigid shape, gives a shape to the cell. So if you ever see a cell that has two membranes and you are asked to identify that cell, you do not even have to hesitate, but that cell is a plant cell. Only plant cells have cell walls. Are we together, grade 9s? So they have a cell wall, and they still have the nucleus somewhere there. Somewhere in the center, as I said, it's spherical, and you can label that to be the nucleus. You can label that to be the nucleus. This is the nucleus. So you can see that our cell is taking shape. We've got the cell wall, we've got the cell membrane, we've got the nucleus there in the middle. Okay? Then what else do plant cells that have that animal cells do not have? Plant cells have what is known as chloroplast. So chloroplasts can be seen to be, okay, let me use green for chloroplast so that we're able to see the difference. So they've got what is known as chloroplast. I've used green for a specific purpose, which you will get to understand as I explain. Have you ever heard of the word chlorophyll? Chlorophyll. I believe you have, grade 9s. Don't disappoint me. Chlorophyll. Ever heard of the word chlorophyll? If you've done photosynthesis, I believe you've heard the word chlorophyll, or if you're in grade 9. If you really are in grade 9, you should have heard the word chlorophyll at least once. So, when you talk of chloroplast, chlorophyll, let's talk of chlorophyll first. Chlorophyll is said to be what gives plants the green color that they usually have, that most plants have. The chloroplast is the spot in a plant cell where photosynthesis takes place. So you know what photosynthesis is? Photosynthesis is a process by which plants make their own food. So for that to happen, they need chlorophyll. The chlorophyll is stored in the chloroplast. Okay? And the chloroplast is where photosynthesis takes place. We believe plants make their own food, and this is done in the chloroplast. And chloroplast is green in color. Okay? So only plant cells have chloroplast, because animals do not make their own food. Animals do not undergo photosynthesis. Animals do not have chlorophyll, and so animal cells do not need the chloroplast. So here is our chloroplast. Chloroplast. And again, I cannot stress this enough, chloroplast is only in plants. Only in plants, and it's green in color. That's why I've used green. And it is used for, it is the spot where chlorophyll, or where photosynthesis, spot for photosynthesis, this spot for photosynthesis. So if a plant does not have chloroplast, then photosynthesis won't occur, won't happen. And if photosynthesis doesn't happen, it won't be able to create, it won't be able to make its own food. So chloroplast only in plants. Cell wall only in plants. Nucleus in both plants and animals. Cell membrane in both plants and animals. Cytoplasm in both plants and animals. Okay, so chloroplast for photosynthesis. And there's what is known as the vacuole. So vacuole are those circles that I'm drawing. So this is known as the vacuole, spelled as V-A-C-U-O-L-E, vacuole. So now, what is a vacuole? A vacuole is simply trying to think of how best to explain this. A vacuole is like a sack, and plant cells have a number of them, not only one. Some plant cells have one big vacuole somewhere, but most plant cells have small, tiny vacuoles spread around the cell. So a vacuole is like a sack, and in this sack is stored food. In this sack is stored waste. In this sack is stored whatever needs to be stored. So a vacuole is like a sack where you can just say storage. It is a storage point of the plant cell. This is where food is stored, this is where waste is stored, and yeah. So a vacuole found in plant cells, though animal cells are said to have vacuoles, really tiny vacuoles, but plant cells have bigger vacuoles. So for vacuoles, well, we can argue they can be said to be found in both plants and animals, but when we talk of plants, they are more visible in plants compared to animals. Okay? So these are the basic parts of a plant cell that you need to know. These are the basic parts of a plant cell that you need to know. And yeah, if you have any question, feel free to ask us. And we can move on to an animal cell. We can move on. We can move on. We can move on. So we've looked at plant cells, we've looked at animal cells. So when we talk of plant cells, here is an example of a plant cell. Plant cell has a regular shape. Plant cells have regular shape, and they have two membranes. Let me use a different color. So that's the cell wall. Then they've got cell membrane. This is a plant cell. Just join it for you to clearly see what we are talking about. And then they've got a nucleus. There's a nucleus somewhere. And then they have the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm. I'm just going to label as dots. Cytoplasm is what we say to be just a semi-fluid, which is like the ground of a cell. Then apart from cytoplasm, they have the chloroplast. They have the chloroplast, and then they have the vacuole, okay. What else have we left out? What else have we left out? Believe that's it. And now let's look at the animal cell. The animal cell has, okay, let's use the same colors. The animal cell has an irregular shape. It also has a cell nucleus somewhere in the center. It also has a cytoplasm. So these are basic structures that the cell has, but cells have more than these structures, which you will get to learn about more as you go to your grade 9. As you go to your grades 10 and 11 and 12. But these are the basic structures of the cell. Okay, so let's label our cell now. Our cells, let's label our cells now. They both have what part is this? This is known as the cell membrane. Both have a cell membrane, and they both have nucleus, and they both have cytoplasm, and this one has chloroplast, and it also has the vacuole. Okay, let's just make sure that you can see where the arrows are directed. Okay, this side as well. Okay, so this is what you need to know about cells. This basic knowledge about cells is what you'll be tested on even as you prepare for your grade 9 final examinations. And this is what is the basis, the foundation of where you're going, even as you achieve and strive to be medical doctors, as you achieve to be biologists, as you achieve to be microbiologists, and all these other professions that have to do with biology is what you need to know even as you prepare for your grade 12 final examinations. And we can just run through the functions. The cytoplasm is the floor of the cell. The nucleus is the heart of the cell. The cell membrane is the security of the cell. Then we've got the chloroplast, we've got the vacuole, and forgot to label the cell wall. Cell wall. Okay, so in the next video we'll try to look at past examination questions on cells. That's for integrated science grade 9. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and can't wait to see you again. So, important to note, cytoplasm, nucleus, and cell membrane are common in both chloroplast, vacuole, and cell wall, are only found in the animal, in the plant cell. Thank you very much for watching, and can't wait to see you in the next video, even as we try and look at past examination questions on cells. Thank you very much.